Hey, listeners, thanks for tuning into the podcast. I just want to take a moment to mention the podcast sponsor, retrogamestore.com.au. Head over there for all your Game Boy refurbish and repair needs. Screens, shells, buttons, and all the bits and pieces. And there's a complete custom build made to order service as well. Also, plenty more retro gaming goodness like video cables, display stand and power supplies, controls, etc. And you can add the code PixelPie at checkout to get 10% off your order. Also, take a moment to say if you enjoyed this episode and haven't already, give it a subscribe or follow and a review where you can. And maybe you want to recommend the Pixel Pie podcast to anyone you know that would enjoy it. That'd be really appreciated. So thanks for listening, and now let's get on with the show.
Hey, this is Iz.Ma, aka Adam, and you're here with the Pixel Pie podcast.
And g'day, Adam. How you doing, buddy?
All good. Great to be here. Thanks.
Oh, mate, I'm just so stoked that you could take the time to come and sit with me and chat, and let's all get to know a little bit more about you. Now, look, just so that everybody's up to speed, the reason why I contacted you is because of the game for Game Boy, Dedius. I'll describe it my way, and that's probably the end state, but we're going to get more into how Adam went from, little Adam with a Game Boy or something up to putting out his own game for people to purchase. We might just do that and we'll get to Dedius. So like in your Instagram description, it says you're a UI artist for a game dev called CoatSync. You're an illustrator, an inker, a concept artist. You've got the words motion graphics, game dev, and pixel pusher. Now, obviously, you have to have a bit of a love for gaming / retro gaming to want to do all those things. Yeah. So tell us who you are, Adam, and maybe just wheel it back a little bit as to how you got to this stage in your life.
So my name is Adam. I go by Iz.Ma, as you said.
Oh, yes, Iz.Ma, yep. You're in Hereford, England, right?
I have just moved to Bristol.
Is that
not Bristol, UK now? Yeah, I think so. Hereford's a very sort of quiet, small town. I love it. Yeah, but there's a lot more going on in Bristol, I think.
Right. Okay.
I've worked as an artist for about 10 years now in various forms through comics and video games, and I now
just
work
what you always wanted to do, like before leaving school and stuff. From you doodling in pads instead of doing algebra.
I feel like it's like the cliche answer, right? It's like, oh, I was always drawing. I definitely was. Like, I always had more of an interest in drawing my own thing than getting on. It was like I always used to joke that even in art class I failed because I was drawing what I wanted to do.
Oh, okay. You weren't drawing the vase with the fruit. You were drawing something else.
Yeah, all that stuff. So
cool.
Yeah, I feel like it's always been a bit of that. Like a kind of like obsession with trying to do
commitment,
what I can.
Yeah, like really into it. Yeah. And so, what about your sort of your gaming sort of history? Were you born with a Game Boy in your hand, or how did that all go?
So, I remember when I was really young, my dad had a Mega Drive.
Right.
And I wasn't allowed to touch it. It was like my dad's, it was the computer. So I remember seeing, like I mentioned before, like Sonic 1 came out the same year as I did.
Yeah, right.
So I remember seeing that, but never being allowed to touch
it. Happy anniversary, mate.
Hey. And then the Saturn came around, and again, it was this like, don't touch it kind of thing. And I remember saying,
I think your dad bought the Saturn as well.
Yeah. I said to my mum, like, oh, I'm bored. And she said, well, why don't you play a video game? Yeah. And I remember the first thing she gave me to play was Wipeout, the Saturn port.
Right.
And it was like,
that's the racer, the hover jet.
Yeah, the kind of similar to F-Zero kind of thing.
Yeah, wicked, huh?
From then, it was like hardcore obsession, I swear. I've got my mum found them not so long back, school books.
Right.
Where you're supposed to, like, I think when you're in primary school, it's like what did I do this weekend? You draw a picture and write the little.
Oh, okay.
This weekend, it was meant to be something like, oh, I hung out with mummy and daddy and played football. But every page was a Saturn game, and I need to find that book. It's like it's really funny because you can see what each game is. There's Sonic 3D, there's Daytona USA, there's Virtual Cop.
It was accurate renditions of the games.
Yeah, I'll send you some pictures after this because it's really funny seeing like this. Like I had to have been less than 10 years old. These hilarious little drawings trying to copy these Saturn games. And I remember the first game I ever had that was mine, that my parents were like, we have bought this for you, not that it's ours and you can play, like this is yours. And it was Virtual On. I don't know if you remember that, the mech combat game.
Yep.
And it was like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, super immersive. It's like that kind of wide 3D stuff and wireframe 3D stuff. And just, there was depth. And all of a sudden it wasn't just a platformer. It was like, well, I'm inside it and I'm doing this. And
it's funny how much of the Saturn had that sort of thing. Because like, I remember my dad came home with Resident Evil and it terrified me as a kid, as it would. But
yeah, of course.
I always laugh and joke about it now because I remember saying to him, like, oh, what level are you on, Dad? And he was like, there are no levels in this game. And to me at the time, it was like completely incomprehensible that there was like...
Because it was a story as opposed to...
Yeah, I was like, why is there not stages? What do you mean there's no level?
Yeah.
So I think the Saturn had a lot of that sort of like, oh, games can be this or that.
Yeah.
So I say to people a lot that I kind of blame that in a big way. Do
you guys still have the Saturn? The Saturn?
No, they actually sold it for a PS1, which is heresy to some Saturn collectors.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
So we went from that to the PS1 to the PS2 and on through that path. Which is funny looking back on it. But it was definitely that first thing.
I mean, we'll get around to, the game that you created, Dedius, is sort of very 8-bit, not even 16-bit. You were like, because the Saturn would have been 32-bit.
Yeah.
And it's like you didn't even sort of get any of this early 8-bit stuff in your life, yet this is where you landed.
My first Game Boy was a Game Boy Color. So even then I was like, a little behind on it. And if I'm straight up honest, that was entirely because of Pokemon, which I think is many people's story.
Yeah. So I think Pokemon was the backbone of Game Boy, for a long time.
So it's my lime green Game Boy Color and Pokemon Blue. That was the Game Boy side in,
Yeah, okay. So then I guess you're sort of getting towards kind of finishing high school and looking for a career, and you're still kind of working through the PlayStations and things like that. And what were some of the games and other sort of, I guess, experiences that you think back on either fondly or not so fondly in gaming as you were kind of working towards, what am I going to do with my life? I can draw, but what am I going to do?
I suppose back then a lot of it was like PS2 was around that time, I guess.
Right.
And like I was very much sort of like Shadows of the Colossus, Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil, like 4 especially.
Real storytelling.
And I did have a GameCube of my own, so there's a lot of that stuff. I think around that time though, when I went to school, for when I did end up there, like art and stuff, rather than like, it's kind of a much more recent thing that video games have become such a serious thing, because I never really thought I could do it. So even back then, it wasn't like, I think I was filling my brain with all these games that I loved, but not with the idea of one day I'll do this.
Right. So I think you mentioned before, though, as we sort of go through this conversation, you'll talk about you've done work with like comics. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I think probably growing up, most kids, like these days, I want to be part of a game development establishment. That's probably more of a reality. Whereas back then, if you're watching 80s, 90s movies, it's like she can draw. She's going to draw comics, and that was that sort of more natural path, which is maybe kind of where you felt you might have ended up.
I remember it might have been Game Maker, like an initial version or something like that, like way back. We're talking like Windows XP. There was some sort of game making program that my friend gave me.
Yeah.
And so inept was I at the time. I was like, why is nothing working? I can't work any of this out. Like, what do you mean I have to write code? I have no idea what that means. It was a complete non-starter. Nothing happened. So I do remember that. Like, I'm glad I got past that sort of barrier later in life.
Yeah. So at what point did you sort of realize that there was an opportunity for you to use your talents and what you really love doing in games? When did the penny drop? Did you just get the job and think, I'll see how it goes? Or did you really kind of realize, no, I can get there and that's where I'm going?
So it's kind of weird how it's all gone. Like I had like an obsessive love of games, and
Right.
especially getting towards that point in my career, I was like super into the indie scene as well. Like
Right.
these stories of like one or two people making.
What was your
amazing
career at that
games.
time? What were you doing when you first left high school?
So I was in university for illustration, and then I just managed to get into an illustration studio
Right.
initially as an intern and then as a job. But that was pure illustration and comics,
Right.
nothing to do
Wow.
with games. But I any chance I could get to be like, oh, there's this with games, or if they were like, oh, I remember my old boss once said like, do you know anything about this Hearthstone? And I was like, I can tell you all this, this, and this, and it was like any avenue I could put that in,
Yeah.
it
So
fit there.
attach yourself to in some way.
Yeah. So if it was like, I remember they did a God of War illustration for something. Not God of War, Gears of War. Sorry, and I was like, wow, I love this, and he had no idea.
Right.
But I was just latching on any place I could, and outside of work. I remember I was talking to some indie developers, people who were using like Game Maker at the time, and I was like, I really want to be able to do this, and it seemed like such a ledge at the time. I was like, I can't do it, and they were like, oh, it's just simple, just watching tutorials, and I was like, nothing's sticking.
Of course, it's all easy when you know how.
But how that ended up developing was that illustration studio got, I guess, bought out or absorbed into a tech company in Florida.
Right.
So we all went over there. And as we were in the creative studio, I all of a sudden fell into an environment where I was surrounded by programmers, actual game artists, developers, UI, everything, every bit of
your dream had come true.
It all of a sudden, it like kind of made a bit of sense. And I had these people who would like, if I ever had any question, I had like literally a person I could go say, how do I do that? Yeah. And everything kind of just clicked into place. And it ended up that we were a creative studio on certain games for that platform.
Right.
So it was like almost by accident I diverted into this, you know.
Yeah, you could have been drawing for comics for some other studio and you'd never have got the same opportunity.
What they say, comedy of errors. Like everything just kind of snapped in.
Well, I mean, they also say luck is like, you know, it's part circumstances and part preparation, you know, so you kind of still got to put yourself, you know, willing and able and on that right train, you know, that right sort of direction.
Yeah.
So you ended up they just took you all to Florida. I mean, that sounds unheard of. Normally say like, and we won't be needing most of you. Thanks for coming.
It was a weird and stressful time, but very obviously a lucky opportunity to get. It was like I was this comic guy here. Yeah. And all of a sudden I was a concept artist, which I'd never been there. And it was like stressful to try and, you know, land on my feet and keep on going. I always had this like paranoia of like, oh man, if I fail at this, it's a long way to fall from Florida back to the UK. So it was a lot of stress. But I think in, you know, a lot of ways, like outside of that office, I was like, I'm going to hit this with everything I've got. I was doing game jams left and right to try and learn and try to learn 3D engines as well. And again, like, I think it's because I was in that environment surrounded by anyone I could have asked, you know?
Yeah. It sounds like it was a pretty positive environment too. You hear a lot of horror stories about people in game development. There's some larger companies that just pretty much enslave their people. And you know, it's like they're all like the Matrix, just feeding off their energy. It sounds like that was not for you. Your situation was a bit more like nurturing and actually treating you like human beings as a team.
I can't speak to anyone else's experience, but I think they would maybe feel the same way as what I'll be about to say. But like, I certainly have some horror stories, as most people do. But I think in a lot of cases, and I wonder if it is the same in those scary AAA studios, that the people around you on your level, your friends are like the best friends. You make such a team, and as terrible as certain bits were, having those friends was like what got you through it. And,
cool.
And I think I feel like that would be the case in a lot of other places as well.
I feel like that would be like the case in a lot of people's lives in other jobs. Like I worked quite some time in hospitality, and the level of professionalism and sort of mental exertion that I was taken to by chefs for long shifts, double shifts, triple shifts, and this had to be done right, or people weren't going to come back, and I was going to get in a lot of shit. I mean, I can remember leaving at one point in my cooking career. I was never a chef, but I was always a cook, and always, just that one level off because I didn't want to go to school. I just wanted to work. Yeah. And these points, I'm like, this is bullshit. I don't know how long I can do this. But once you sort of push, and again, the guys are in the kitchen with you, the younger crew, you're like, if we didn't have him and him over there and her out there, you would have left for shiz.
Yeah.
And you're really bonded, and you learn so much about yourself knowing that I can go that little bit more. And it's a good platform. So I think outside the studios in the real world, there's always experiences like that, and they're almost always going to be beneficial.
Yeah.
So when did you kind of, because like I guess the end point here is we want to talk about Dedius, which is a game for the Game Boy, and it's your game. Maybe just take us through from that environment how you found yourself going, I'm going to do this, and then take us in as much depth as you want through the whole process of creating a game from scratch the way you want it, avoiding all the kind of like, I don't want it to look exactly like that, but I like that. Like as an artist, it must be tricky. Every musician will say, oh, look, I try to make my own music, but obviously Jethro Tull, Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith were influences. So how do you go out there and make a game without people going, he's clearly ripped off Pokemon, like that's ridiculous. Just the concept stage of thinking, I'm going to make a game.
So I had taught myself Game Maker, and I had made a few games in it, and I liked the idea of making a Game Boy game. But the thing with Game Maker is it doesn't enforce the limitations. Like you can make a lot on Game Maker. There's nothing to say that wouldn't work. And,
this is sort of like a Mac/Windows type bit of software, is it?
Game Maker?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a PC program. Yeah.
Right.
Well, okay. I think you can get it on Mac as well. But it's made to make I think people are making 3D games in it now and stuff. Like it's pretty flexible. Right. It's common in the indie scene, but it doesn't have any like hard limitations on what you can make as opposed to a Game Boy. Like you can't have art on the certain size and stuff like that. So I was making this stuff, but it wasn't quite looking right. And I think the fact that I didn't have the limitation was like messing me up, and it was frustrating me. And I was showing my friend this work, and we talked about how we were going to do it. There was a version in Unreal Engine, which is hilarious now because that's a 3D engine.
Sorry. There's an Unreal Engine version of Dedius.
The game I'm currently working on. Sorry, okay. I should have said I was working on a different game.
That would be pretty bloody cool.
It's going to lead after that. I was working on a different game at the time,
right?
And it was just frustrating me. I couldn't. I think I needed the constraint.
Right.
That friend who I was working with is huge into his Game Boy, and he's still like a big collector. He's kind of like got the case with all the games and all that.
Right.
He's an amazing guy named Christian Santori. And he found, because he's always got his ear to the ground, it seems, this, I think it must have been like the month it was put out. He was like, oh, look at this engine, Game Boy Studio. You can make something and it'll put it straight on a Game Boy.
Right.
And like, it was like, oh, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And at the time, you couldn't make a platformer, which is what I was making before. So it was like, I'll park that. And a few of the people at that studio in Florida were like, well, let's set up a game jam just for ourselves.
So what's a game jam for those of us that...
a game jam is you make a game from scratch, beginning to end, usually in 48 hours. They're usually weekend jams. So you, most of the time, don't know what you're going to make going into it. You sit, work something out, and you bang it out in a weekend.
So this is a kind of like Red Bull pizza driven, sort of like personal development type activity.
Yeah, and you more often than not would make a prototype or an example or a demo.
That's pretty cool.
People have got like mixed views on them, but I love them. I love that kind of like
that's fine.
intense kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we set ourselves a game jam, but we set 30 days, which is very generous for a game jam.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to see what we could do with that engine.
Right.
And at the end of 30 days, I had made that. I mean, it's based on a story I'd been writing for a while, but the story of that particular game kind of just came around that jam.
The other one, or Dedius?
Dedius.
Right.
And it came together in those 30 days. And it was pretty much the bulk of all the work was done in 30 days.
Oh, that's cool.
And by the end of it, because I was posting along the way, I feel like that's good motivation to just be like, I'm working on a thing, and people are like, oh, we want to keep seeing it.
Yeah, holds you a bit accountable.
Yeah. By the time I got to the end of it, it was like, oh man, I have to release this thing now. I have to finish it. And I think I took another 30 days to just tighten up everything, fix it all up, and it ended up coming out. And that's kind of where that came from. It all from that jam.
Right. It's crazy just looking through your Insta here and just seeing things like there's one post here which is like a 3D model, and then in the corner has got the translated sort of overhead game view of the church. And just sort of seeing the tombstones, it's sort of like, it doesn't happen to me often because I don't give many games a lot of time. Like I know people that play like, GTA Vice City, and they're like, you put me anywhere blindfolded and I will tell you exactly how to get to anywhere else, and super familiar. And like, because Dedius has 11 different endings. So I've played the game a number of times. I've got 7, I think maybe 8. And it's just the first time I kind of looked at that picture, I went, oh, it's a church. The church actually doesn't have any detail. It's like a white blocky thing. But I see the trees, I'm like, that's a church. And it's the first time I've been familiar with a space. And it sort of cracks me up to think that I can be familiar with a 2D space in a Game Boy. It's a good little adventure. Sorry, go on.
No, you just froze. I panicked a bit.
So you did sort of like the meat of it in that sort of 30 odd days. And then what was the process of sort of like, at that point did you go, I think I'm gonna put this out there and ask people to give me money for it, because at the end of the day, a product is kind of a goal, not for a selfish reason, but just to sort of, I guess, see what your worth is and what people like. Money can be a kind of form of feedback.
Yeah,
everybody can take something for free and say it was great. So at what point did you kind of go, I want some monetary feedback on this? Let's see how we went.
The game went up for free, and it is still free today. Like it was one of those things where it was like a pay any price kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it says on your thing. It says pay whatever you want. But nothing's free, right? Let's be very clear. Your time is your time, and what you're giving is zero. That did not cost nothing.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how it worked out. Is like I did, like I say, I put it up for free, but with the pay as you want thing. And like you're saying, like people were super cool with that. Like, I don't regret for a second putting that up for free. And the people who wanted to chip in did chip in. And I think giving it that wider spread initially up front, it's like you hear the stories of, was it the first level of Doom was free?
Yeah.
I think I have a little bit of that in my mind. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't think I suffered for putting it up for free. I was talking to someone the other day. I was like, well, here's what I did. Like it really worked for it. And they were like, well, I'd never do it for free. Like,
But you're obviously at a point in your sort of career and path where you're still open to learning and trying new things. And like you said, well, more like I said, this was just put it out there and see if people will love it, because it's all good and well. You could chug away at something for like 2 years and it's like, people are like, it's okay.
Well, it's like kind of what they say, isn't it? There's like a common trap when you're making your own game that you'd be like, oh, I'm going to make this open world MMO, and it's going to be the
Yeah.
best game ever, and that's
Yeah.
the first game these people plan to make. And you say to them, if you make these smaller experiences, was it Edmo McMillan? I think he said he made 30 games before he landed on Meat Boy.
Right.
And you learn a little bit from everything.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of important as well.
Not only that, if you show that you've got the propensity to conceive, develop, and deliver, then if you're looking to actually have your games published, then they're going to sort of go, oh, this isn't just some dude that came out of college and was consumed by another company and wants to publish a game. I mean, look around the room. Every second person in this room wants to do that. So, you know, it's only going to benefit you to show that you're doing that. Is there no kind of like, I just wonder, like, sometimes if there was any kind of, did you have to have a discussion with your employer about, hey, I'm going to make my own game? Is there any conflicts of interest or anything like that you had to sort of tiptoe, be careful around? Because like, obviously you're working with their IP, and if there was a hint of what you're doing at work in what you're delivering on your own, they'd be like, come on, like that, you're having a laugh now.
So definitely that happened. The place I worked before had a pretty strict,
no moonlighting.
If you make this cool thing, we kind of want that kind of thing.
Oh, you're ours. Wow.
But to its benefit, I think that company was making a kind of like the next step from VR. It was a mixed reality headset. So it's similar to HoloLens.
So like AR, more AR than VR.
The blend between the two, it was. This is a whole thing to go down. But it was so far removed from a Game Boy game that I think they were like, oh, that's just the minnow in the pond. We don't need that.
Okay.
So I think it being a Game Boy was hugely beneficial in that regard, you know.
Is that part of the reason why you went down that route, as opposed to, because like your childhood of gaming was a Saturn, leading into PlayStation stuff, and then it's like, well, I'm going to go back about 4 generations. Why did you go back to Game Boy? Was it because that tool was accessible and it gave you the constraints and it was easy for you to make it an achievable outcome?
Yeah. It was like, I say to him, almost entirely because of Christian finding that engine.
You bought him a beer. Let's be safe.
It came out all right in the end, eh?
Yeah.
But
and he's like, oh, make sure I get a free copy. And you're like, well, everybody gets a free copy, so sure.
He actually got he's got the number 1 copy of the game. It's got number 1 written on it and it's signed, and I was like, this is for you. So he's
did you do physical releases of this?
Yeah,
right. A friend of mine, and someone's been on the podcast, Tristan, Custom Handhelds, he's got a copy, and I think he contacted you and had did his own box up and stuff like that. And it just looks so mint. And I'm like, I need to pay more attention and get in on this stuff. Like, I think it's Incubate just about to put out Pine Creek, and I look at it and I'm like, I don't do scary movies very much, and that looks like a pretty scary kind of game. And I'm like, if only it was just a little more towards my side, I would love to, you know, put my money into that.
Yeah.
I
the whole thing has been such a crazy thing. Like, I didn't expect any of this. Like, and I know that's, again, like a cliche thing to say, but I genuinely didn't. I didn't think anyone was going to play this game. And I said to my friends, like, I just wanted to, like, it was like a way of making a story or just doing some art and a thing I could play on my phone. I think it was the first day or the day after I released it on Itch, there was a YouTube playthrough of it, and I was like, what? Like, where's this come from?
You know, you hit the big time when people doing playthroughs of your game.
I had, honest to God, no expectation that would ever happen.
Wow. So what did their playthrough consist of? Did they do like all 11 endings, or?
So he didn't finish it in the first video he did, but he went on to do, like, it was like episodes of it.
Oh,
and
cool.
He was voicing all the characters, kind of that over the top YouTube thing, and I was like, I can't believe any of this. It was cool. The guy seemed awesome.
Oh, that's so good.
I don't know how he found it. If he was one of these guys that, like, is always on itch.io, like, kind of updating it and seeing what's up there. Like, that must have been how he found it. Because I don't think I had,
like, day 2.
Like I said, I wasn't like, buy this thing.
Yeah.
Like it's a.
Oh, that's awesome, mate.
So that was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you and now you're working on another game, and this was the game that you shelved because you didn't have the tool, a platformer, and now you're working on that. So do you want to kind of share as much of that as you want? Give us an idea. I've seen some of anybody can go to your Instagram and see a few little animations and some kind of cool stuff. I mean, when I look at, he's kind of like no, he looks like the fifth member of Kiss.
Hey, I'll take that.
Yeah, it's just sort of rocking around a dungeon. Like, take my money. That's all I'll say. I mean, let's know what's going on.
The funniest little path, man. I tell you.
Yeah.
I wonder actually if the old one is on there, because
is there any relation? Really totally different story to Dedius?
Totally different, like unrelated thing. Which I think some people might be maybe upset about. I don't know. Yes, there is. If you go a fair way down, sorry to do this on the conversation.
That's cool.
You will see
we get Doom stuff, and then sort of skulls, then the church, and a couple of skating decks.
Yeah. You'll see there's a picture of some guns halfway down, like concept art of like grenade launchers and shotguns.
Yep.
I can see just above those by like 2 rows. There's like a few Game Boy looking platformer things.
Yep. Oh, there's some. Oh, he's got a cool helmet. Oh, does he transform?
Hang on, let me.
Are we talking about some power ups? Because he starts as just normal Kiss guy. Eventually, he's got some swords, and then he's got like a helmet with spikes, and in the end, he looks like something out of like Mothra with no wings.
I just sent you a link to like the one video of it.
Right. Okay.
In our chat. So there was this Game Maker version of it, and it's really funny now looking at the version with no limitations. Looks much worse than the one with limitations, which is kind of funny how that's evolved. So
you're talking about the original version you did of Game Maker before?
Yeah,
they had the Game Boy tool, right? I'm with you.
So this story has been like banging around in my head for a little while, and then after that, I played Hollow Knight, and that game is like, it's got to be a top 10 for me.
Right.
They were hand drawing the art and making it in 3D, so you had these like sort of parallax environments. I was like, I could do that story this way, and it started getting developed that way. And I was like, okay, it'll look like this. It'll look much better because it'll be drawn in my style. And that kind of fell off with the physical edition of Dedius, because like that kind of became all consuming to make sure that got across the line. So it fell away. And now, due to the success of Dedius, like I think the people at Game Boy Studio themselves are like, hey, we're making this. If you need anything specific to make a game, let us know.
My goodness, that is awesome.
It got to this point where they're amazing. And it got to this point where they were like, oh, we did this amazing thing you can use. And it was like, okay, this is all coming back full circle. You know, I should be using this. And I've started now properly down the path of remaking it in Game Boy Studio 3.
That is amazing. So can you give us a bit of a general summary of the plot? Do you have a name? Can you share the name or anything?
It has a working name right now, which I'm not going to share just yet.
Is it like Project Cantaloupe or something crazy like that?
Star Wars was it Blue Harvest?
Something
like that.
That's Project Cantaloupe. Let's just call it that.
Yeah, I'm afraid of it sticking on that name.
Sure.
I don't want it to be that thing where you get to the point where you're like, it's just that.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like that because it could evolve and change. And that's a good idea.
So, in that regard as well, sorry to be a pain. It's I don't know how much I'm willing to say about the plot, but I'll talk about the game.
But is it like boy meets girl, boy kills dragon, dragon gets girl on the afterlife?
It's kind of similar to Castlevania. I think a lot of people will say that when it comes out. I wanted to make a game with the kind of, people seem to like the story depth of Dedius. I want to make something with that depth, but as more of an action game.
Right.
So that's the overview of that game for me. It's like
are there
something
choices in this game?
You can same as there's like these things to puzzle out in Dedius, there's going to be that in this.
Right. I'm not a big RPGer. I don't believe that Pokemon counts as an RPG in my opinion, but then I don't play a lot of RPGs either. Like I've tried a few of the Chrono Triggers and things like that. And it's like, oh, I don't read books, so I'm not reading this. And everybody says, oh, prepare to give away 80 hours of your life. When I spoke to Tristan, because he came to catch up and sort of just sat there and just played Dedius for like half an hour and ignored me. I was like, it must be pretty good. And I said to him, like, how long does it take to do a playthrough? And he said, oh, first time, probably just a couple of hours. And you'll kind of be poking around town and that sort of thing. I was like, you're right. And then by the time I'd sort of worked out where everything was and the little trigger events I need to be in here and this on that day and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I could almost get to like an ending within about 40 minutes, 35 to 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good depth because that's like a lunch break. That's like after dinner, kids are going to bed. That's I'm at work early. And there's still things to be done. So just as a real chump that doesn't really like RPGs, it's kind of an RPG and you got me. You can have my money. So if it's going to be anything like that, you'll pull us in. I prefer a platformer, so you've already got me.
So probably my favorite game on the Game Boy is Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins.
Yep.
I absolutely love that game. And that's probably the closest of what this one's going to be like, which to me is really funny on the face of it because that game is super sweet and friendly and this game isn't going to be that.
Is this still going to have the sort of like darker elements to it? I mean, there's some imagery in Dedius that I know I posted it and I said to you again tonight that I was playing with some like the way my Easy Flash was working in a Game Boy and I was like, it was doing this weird kind of like shimmering of screen. So I put it into my Game Boy Color and Dedius was in color and I was like, what? And there's like some screens where this imagery comes up and I was like twice as scared and there was little things like it's not a spoiler but there's flowers all around town and when it's in color they are so much easier to find because they're like an orange flower in a green field and when it's all just monochrome or whatever your palette set up to be on a like an LCD Game Boy it's sort of shades, right? And I was like it was so much. I would recommend if you get it, play it on a Game Boy Color if you've already played it on a Game Boy, and you'll just get a whole new experience.
So it was actually a total accident, and I didn't. It took me a while to. Yeah, it took me a while to realize it had happened because the initial version of Game Boy Studio was only 4 colors, only Game Boy.
Right.
So there wasn't even an option to make anything colored.
I assumed you'd owed to the old, like when they went GBC, they did like the DX games and stuff where they had like the palette in them. So when I was like, oh, this dude really loves his Game Boys, but no, it was just an accident.
So if you look at it, it's anything active on the screen is the red color and anything passive, like the background is green.
Yeah.
So I think something in the code was triggering that change. So, but like you say, it was like a happy accident, right? You suddenly have all this stuff kind of a bit more colorized.
So thermal vision.
But it was totally an accident, like kind of a happy accident kind of thing. But
awesome.
I've talked. You mentioned you saw it on my Instagram. I do want to do a Dedius DX, but I want it to be a full 3D game.
What do you mean by full 3D?
Like, trying to think of like a similar game, a modern 3D adventure game that you can walk around this village in,
like a kind of dungeon crawler Doomy style 3D.
Kind of something closer to like Ocarina of Time kind of thing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But in that 3D, not as in like 2.5 or top down 2D, but literally like almost like a first person.
It'd be like I've had a few sort of how versions. I would do this. Like you get some old games
like a third person sort of thing.
Yeah. Like a kind of almost like a fixed camera point where you walk around the spaces and then
and when you go around the corner, the world kind of turns to give you the imagery of you've gone around the corner.
Kind of like the way Final Fantasy VII used to be, where it would have like these like views of the world. A lot of that was the backgrounds was 2D. I just realized as I said that. But that kind of thing where it was like you're overlooking these areas.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, there's no real 3D unless like until you get VR. 3D is still a 3D game is still an illusional perception of 3D based on perspective and lines drawn on angles and things like that. It's like when they call like a lot of the sort of side-scrolling sprawls are 2.5, and it's like, well, it's 2D, but because you can move sort of north south up and down the footpath, it becomes a 0.5. So it's all about terminology, I guess, and what you're used to.
It's funny because I had been, like I say, in the beginning I wasn't making games, but I was like kind of headcanoning some of them, just like trying to create what I think would be a cool game. And a version of Deadius has been around for years and years. But it wasn't, like I say, it's kind of based from a comic initially, and then the one that ended up being on the Game Boy wasn't that story I had planned.
Right.
And it's got to the point where the sequel, if it ever comes, would be that initial story. Right. But the way I'd want to tell it is kind of a bit more higher fidelity. It wouldn't be a Game Boy game. I'd want it to be like more of a sort of like horror 3D game. And I had this like thing of, man, as well as Deadius did, not a lot of people have played it, relatively. So if I release a sequel to a game not many people played, I should probably remake that in a way that's more accessible to a lot more people.
Yeah,
so that's what the thinking with that is.
I reckon, like, I was just thinking that if you do like are you planning to do any like reissues of the hard copy version?
I get emails nearly daily.
So that's a yes then.
About it. It's always something I'm looking into. It's trying to find the right way to do it. It won't, no matter how it ends up happening, it won't be the same way as it happened before. Right. Poor Spacebot. I love him dearly, but it was a lot of work for one guy, so I understand how difficult that was for him.
Right. So Spacebot is the publisher.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So I have questions about that as well. One thing I was going to say before is like, if you did a reissue, like I don't know, it's like a platinum version, because there's 11 endings, right? Like maybe you could do like something really rad, like you could do like a 10-page comic, like something you could just knock up in your lunchtime because you're awesome and you can draw, and it could be like the 12th ending or something.
I stress a lot.
Because I love that shit. Like if I want to buy something, I want. Yeah, like I'm everybody else. I want so much more for the least price possible or whatever. I love seeing the extra bits that come with these games.
I stress and worry a little bit about doing something like that to it. When people were so kind to grab the first runs and just be like, oh, there's this more money you have to spend for this extra bit. So that kind of stresses me out a little bit.
Surely it's become apparent that there's a bunch of people that missed out and want to give you money for.
Yeah.
I guess if you do, the problem is if you do like an upgrade and you start throwing extra bits, that you are going to get people's butts hurt. They're going to go, well, where's my comic? I feel like you're just cashing in on your fame now. It's a difficult decisions that you have to make as a self-motivated developer and producer.
That's it, right? It's like the most important thing to me about any of this is that people get a chance. Like there are people who say, I want this and I couldn't, and it's like that's more important to me than their money. I would like them to be able to have a copy. And I say to those people, it's available for free, but I will let you know in the meantime if anything happens. So it's, in my opinion, it's about doing it the way I see is right for most people, kind of thing.
So a sequel in 3D would be the wisest and fairest way to go, because no one's going to be hurt because it's a whole new game, so to speak.
Yeah, I was just trying to find real quick how far back there was some art of that game, because it goes way even before I got to Florida, and I moved there in 2014. So if this game ever comes out, it will be what the story was meant to initially be, which is really funny that it came this way around it.
Yeah. So with this next game that's coming out, do you have an approximate kind of drop date or?
So I'm actually currently in another jam with it. So it's a really similar story with Deadius. And It's a lot bigger of a game than Deadiest. Yeah. But I optimistically had said before this jam, like my partner is moving here in September.
Oh, cool.
She's coming over from Florida, and I was
That'd be nice.
I imagine it's a nightmare.
You have to get the game done before she turns
That's
up.
what I'm saying, right? I imagine it would be a nightmare to like be in a relationship with someone who's like huddled over their computer, like tapping away all night, every night.
September.
Like I can't imagine that would be much fun for anyone. Yeah. So I had always said to myself, I want to get this done and out of the way before she moves here. And then this game jam came up, and the duration of that jam is 3 months, which again is like kind of unheard of.
Yeah,
but about fits that scale, right? Like just about. So I was like, well, if I jump on that, I have to do it. You know, like I can't be like, I'll do it tomorrow. So
okay. So some few signs sort of kind of channeling you down a sort of goal. So these game jams. So who organizes this?
There's like it's always different people. It's not like one person does these jams. If there's a thing on itch.io, I don't know if you ever look on that website.
No.
But there's a bit on the top that says jams, and it's hilarious because like at any one point there's like 10 jams going. You see like a year calendar, and people have got everything going because there's like. You can get them for anything. Like I think Haunted PS1 guys are doing another one soon, but there's like horror jams, Game Boy jams, VR jams. You know, it's all over the place in a good way. But they're all done by different people.
Okay, but it's generally kind of like a community driven. It's not something that the developing houses sort of go, this would be really great. You guys get together for the weekend and smash something out and show us what you got. This is something that you guys do for, like you said, for personal development, revise, come up with some ideas and maybe publish a game or two on the side.
Well, that's it, right? Like I mentioned earlier, it's really good for prototyping. And if you find something, that's kind of it in a nutshell, right? If you find something that is worth sticking with, you stick with it. But if you don't, you've only spent 2 days on it.
And do you share it amongst each other, like within the jam? Does everybody kind of get a copy of each other's thing and sort of...
It depends on the
feedback?
jam. There's usually things like a Discord or something or a Reddit for the jam, and everyone chucks everything up. So there's ways of sharing everything. It's a really cool way of learning. I've said to a few people in the past, I did a 2-day jam for a game I made called Petapogo, and I think it will forever be the most enjoyable thing I've ever made because
that's great.
I had, like I say, no idea of what I was making day one. I think it was like a Friday evening. We just got back from work, started doing it, and then I finished the game comfortably within the final hour on the Sunday. Like not stress, done. It just wrapped so gently in that last hour. I just penciled down and I have a game, and there was like no disaster with it. The game worked, and I was like, this is that's like as perfect as I could have been. As enjoyment to work on, kind of thing.
Nice, that's great. Yeah, I imagine it's a little bit like MasterChef or something like that. Like frantic for a couple of days, and it's like, just gonna get this last bit in, and
if you like that last bit of garnish on it at the end.
Yeah. And if you don't, it like the whole game just like crashes at the credits. Like, damn it.
Conversely, we did a game jam once, and it was when Endgame came out. Avengers Endgame,
right?
And we were in my bedroom in Florida, and we had this like ridiculous projector set up. And I had this huge white wall in my house, and we were projecting all of the Avengers movies whilst we were jamming.
My goodness.
And it was like programming in a cinema. It was just like yeah. And as the jam ended and the movies ended, we timed it so like the hour after we went to go see Endgame.
Man.
It was perfect, but I didn't get a game out of it. It was like so distracting. We're like, yeah.
And how much of Endgame did you sleep through?
It was like our reward. It was hard to sleep. It's hard to sleep through that film anyway, but
yeah, you're right. I can't imagine how exhausting it would be. But I mean, like you said, it's about the friendships and the people you were doing it with and the concept. And when you're really into it, it's like when you're a kid on your BMX and like you could just ride it all day. You do not tire. So when you're into something, it gets everything.
It's so hard to explain. Another one of my games, It's called Sisyphus Chicken.
What's it called?
I wanted Sisyphus Chicken. So like the story of Sisyphus, where he's pushing the rock up the hill. And
I'm not aware of the story. Yeah, tell me.
It's like a Greek legend. I'm butchering it, but a guy would push a boulder up a hill.
Yeah.
And if he stopped for a break, the boulder would tumble down the hill, and he'd have to start again. And it was like there's a lot in life to get this boulder up. So the idea, the whole thing was so stupid. My friend Christian, he was like, yeah, this Reddit post says if you slap a chicken 20,000 times, it will cook.
Okay.
And I was like, that is genius. I'm going to make a game about it. And I was in work all day with it, like pickling in my brain, like doing my day studio stuff. And I was like, I'm going to leave this office. I get home at around 6:30 and I'm going to have a game on itch by tomorrow. I said to him, I'm going to do it. I'm going to have everything done.
Wow.
And have the game out by tomorrow. And I did it like in the final hour. And again, I think there's something about that like tight turnaround time that is just, I love it. I love it so much. And the game was ridiculous and it's not high art by any means, but it works. Right. I think there's definitely some enjoyment to that. I think give me a deadline.
Yeah, there's a benefit to also having those kinds of exercises to know, like we've all worked with someone in any business or industry where they struggle to find the balance between doing something 100% correctly and also just getting it done. Imagine you're working with someone, you're putting boxes on a pallet, and every time they put the box down, they twist it and they line it up perfectly on the corners. And you're like, that's great, but it's going to take you a bloody long time to put all those boxes on the pallet. You can put them on there and slap them down. At the end, the pallet stands tall. It's not falling over. It's going in the truck. Everybody's happy. There's obviously the guy that slaps them on and they're all crooked and the pallet falls over as soon as the fork comes under it. But you're setting yourself these goals and saying, I want the pallet to be tall and straight and safe, and put it in the truck and it goes. Details are fun, but about having an effective pallet within this time period is what's really going to matter. And I think sometimes we get ourselves a little too much rope and we don't think about just getting it done.
Well, it's like, I'm just as bad as anyone else for it. It's like, it's very easy to be like, I'll do something else tonight. I won't work on the game. And if you fall into that, which I couldn't blame anyone for doing, it's very easy to the next day go, I got a little bit further in my game. I'll play like the game I'm playing rather than making, I'll play more of that. But with a jam, it's like, it's like, did you do it? No, I played something else instead. Well, you didn't do it.
Well, you've now got the benefit of A, being in a 3-month jam, and B, having your partner arriving. And if you don't get it done, there's a highly likely chance that you may not get back to it for some time. And you want to do it. So you are like, okay, this is my window. I love a window.
And it does happen as well. Like there's another 3D shooter I was working on, and I was like, it wasn't for a jam, but I was, it was for a jam. That's probably why I did work on it. It was for the Haunted PS1 jam. I missed the deadline because that was my first big thing in a 3D engine. Like it was made in Unity, like a 3D first person shooter.
Yeah.
And I still to this day, I'm not very good with that stuff. I'm trying to learn. But I missed the deadline and it kind of just fell by the wayside. And I look at it all the time. It's like, it's something you can play right now in some form.
Right.
But it just never got finished. And I look at it like, it's like almost like having a ready meal in the fridge, like I can just finish that.
That's cool. Well, it's still there, and I guess if you're on that mindset, you can sort of truck back. Yeah.
It's like sometimes I feel like you have that like passion at a time for it. Like, when I was making Dedius, I couldn't see anything other than Dedius. Like I had to house sit for I think 2 days. No, it might have been more than that. Whilst I was doing that jam, and I had an iPad and pixel art thing, and I was just like, I need to do this, and I was like writing out these maps and notes and typing everything up, and it was
opening the can of dog food and just sort of like tipping it, onto the ground instead of the bowl, and like, while you're still doodling away on the iPad.
And that feeling is exactly what I have now with this new game. And like when you have that feeling, you've got to like kind of chase it.
So jealous. So jealous. I really am. It's a thrill to create. I mean, like,
yeah.
Just to take items and objects and material and turn it into something else. Like I have it mildly when I take an STL file from Thingiverse and I put it on an SD card, and I put it in my 3D printer, and this roll of plastic spaghetti, becomes a Pokemon. And I'm like, yes. I didn't really do shit, but I built this thing from a bag of bits and stuff. The other day I had to kind of extend my table, which holds my big TV and all my consoles, and make another table that had to be the same height out of the same material. And I built it. I'm like, yes, I did this. I had an idea in my head and it happened. And, you're at that next level where it's, I know we probably all watched a bunch of stuff about like the making of ET for 2600. And like that guy, he cops a lot of shit and the game cops a lot of shit, but he had a very, very small window. And he was literally like doing it in his head. They brought the equipment to his house. He didn't do anything except eat, poop, and program that game.
Yeah.
And like you, he was just like, I had nothing else in my life but just do it. I mean, he sat in front of George Lucas and went, yep, I'll do it. He's like, I really got to do this now. 100% jealous.
To go back to that, it's like I appreciate that you got to like, criticism is valid on certain things, but any game now I see him playing, I play a lot all the time. I think on this side of things now, I'm like, I know how hard it was to make my tiny little game, and I see hundreds of hours go into some of these games,
large teams,
hundreds
of hours per person on a large team,
and it will come out on the other end and someone will go, but that's shit. I'm like, oh my god! I saw that thing recently. The
kind of
Ratchet
punch him in the nose.
Ratchet and Clank. It's like that bush doesn't move. It's a B tier game, and I'm like,
oh yeah.
Oh my god! Like I say, there is a side to it where criticism is valid, but it's like, oh my god, man!
A game like that, if you're noticing the bushes aren't moving, maybe you're not playing it right. I don't know.
I despair sometimes. Like I don't know, that thing of 2D games aren't worth $60 I saw recently, and it's just like, oh my god.
Oh, don't buy them.
That's it, right? Like,
shut up and go away and spend $90 on a 3D game where the bushes move.
I worry that like people forget that there's people behind these things, making them. It doesn't just appear. Even like you see like FIFA and Call of Duty, they're not my things really, but I know that there's teams working just as hard on those behind the scenes.
The stuff that blows me away probably the most is like every now and then, for some reason I can't get to sleep, and this doesn't help me get to sleep, is I'll put on some random playthrough drive of like Forza, a dude and he's done all the camera work and he just gets this like Koenigsegg or a sort of Veyron, and it's parked in front of his house, and it's raining, and the camera pans and I just watch that and I'm just like, you are kidding me. Like, why are we not back on the moon already? Are you looking at this? This is insane.
Those games as well, Forza, are so good, man. Like,
it's bonkers how good it looks. It's those sorts of experiences, like watching some Twitch streamers do stuff that is amazing. I'm like, I don't have the skill all the time to get to the place where I can maximize the potential of a game like that. So it's much better for me just to sit back and eat a donut and have a cup of tea and watch you just crush it, because it looks so beautiful. I mean, the whole sort of, the story of how hard it is to get stuff out, or the amount of effort it takes. I want to sort of just circle back to Spacebot, and if you want to share a bit of information about how you form that relationship with someone to get your game out there, because once you've got it, you're like, kind of stand on the street corner going, hey, I got this. And I mean, this is the opportunity to kind of like wave that flag for those people on that next level.
Yeah. So I think, at least in my opinion, if you think about Game Boy Studio, at least back then, if you think about Game Boy Studio, a few names float to the top, and Spacebot and Dragonborn certainly was one of them.
I've got Dragonborn too. Again, an RPG that I can play because I'm not like reading novels every 2 minutes.
It was like clear early on he was crushing it. He was a notable person, and I didn't know too much about the guy back then, but I was like, oh man, look, this thing could be made. And I think he had made moves on making physical carts maybe before I'd finished Dedius.
Right.
And like I said, I had no grand plans for that game when I made it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'll put it on itch or whatever. Or I was playing it on an emulator on my phone. I was like, that'll do. I can play it. And I think he reached out to say like, oh, have you thought about putting this on a cartridge? And that's kind of how that started. Around about that time, again, like I say, I hadn't expected any of it. I started getting messages from other publishers,
Right.
and it
so it had been released as a ROM, and then people were sort of going,
yeah.
Hey,
I had like a kind of like rough early relationship with a lot of publishers. It's like, and you'll learn talking to them. Some of them are a pain in the ass. But then all of a sudden, Spaceport reached out and he's like, hey, how about we do this? And it was like immediately different. And I always say to him, it was immediately different because he had come at it from a different angle. He wasn't some guy who just wanted to put games out. He was a guy who had made a game and wanted to put games out. Like he knew what it took to do this thing.
Yeah.
And I think his understanding on that side of things really helped foster that friendship and that working relationship. I knew he was like, he has much to my jealousy a full set of Saturn games, and it was like, this guy is another one of me. Like it was like, you know,
that next evolution of you, like the extra skill set to get things out
like
there.
he'd released his Game Boy game, he has a full set. It was like just immediately apparent that it was like a friend, you know, and to this day, like I'm still very good friends with him. I love that guy so much. And I think it's because of that the whole thing felt different. And so we agreed to do it. And I could, you know, hand on heart say that would not have happened without his help. Like my game would not have a physical copy or the reach it did without his help. And I can't thank him enough for it.
Yeah. So he was like a developer that had, like a game developer within himself that had the ability to kind of get things physically sort of delivered as well. Is that sort of his position?
So
because there's a lot of work there's a lot of work in there with Incubate games as well.
That's a bit more of a modern thing, I think, a recent thing.
Right. Okay.
His initial stuff was just for himself, and it was like, as far as I could tell, as far as I understand, him tracking down each piece, like how best to get the box printed, how best to get the cartridge printed, the PCBs, like because it's all custom pieces and custom printed. You know, like it's not. I know some people like repurpose old carts by like reflashing them, or you can find like cheap shells with just like on AliExpress or something. He had gone the whole hog on everything, and it was down to him tracking it down.
Right. And you've got to be reliable, and you've got to, if you're going to get out 1,000, then you've got to have 1,000 consistent across. And the limited runs make it even harder because people are like, yeah, we don't want to print 1,000 boxes. We're usually doing 10,000 or 60,000.
We found that out in one situation. I think it might have been the box, that there is like a minimum print run, as you say. I think that's not something people would think about, but like I think the minimum might have been 200. So it's like can we do a few more? It's like, no, you have to do 200 more. It's like, shit. So that's 200 of everything.
By 200,
you know?
So 200, 400, 600.
Yeah, I think that's how it worked, but it was like we couldn't just do the small amount, we needed extra. So people don't think about that side of things. But he was on top of everything. Everything came out at the highest quality I think he could have done. I don't know. I'm bowled over. I'm so happy and lucky I got to work with that guy. And like I say, I love him dearly, and I talk to him every day still.
So will your next project be assisted by him or with him, or?
I'm not sure yet how it's going to go, because there's a lot going on there behind the scenes. I think. Do
you think you'll go physical on this?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still like.
Yeah.
Like I say, it was never the plan with Dedius initially, so I didn't have that in my mind when I was making it. I feel like I'm in the same.
I'm just a person that is really enjoying this side of Game Boys, the newer stuff, and I'm looking at things like I'm looking at the Pine Creek, and I'm just like, and then seeing Tristan's Dedius that he kind of knocked up and stuff, and just thinking, Yeah, I want more, and I want to support more. And
The one thing I would say that I have been thinking about for this current game, like I said, I have friends who make statues.
ooh,
And I would love to do a statue release for this next game, and I've been thinking about that a lot. And I went there from just now from I wasn't thinking about it to super edition. So I did a big jump there. But that at the very least, at least having a statue of it has been in my mind. Like I can see you've got like some impressive stuff there, but on like some of the higher end statues, you get pieces you can switch out, like heads and arms.
Yeah, like different arms and fists and faces and things. Yeah.
I want a statue where you can do that. And in here it's all planned out, but it's a lot of money to commission that. Even if I can do a little bit of sculpting, but I'm not very good. But I'd love to like just sculpt out an idea.
Yeah.
But to take that to one of my friends and be like, I want to do this edition, that's on my mind a lot.
Okay.
So, but again, that's cart before the horse. If the game comes out and it's trash and no one wants it, there's no use in making a statue version of it.
That's pretty. I can imagine like this massive statue in a box. It's like, like the boxes that like a big bottle of Johnny Walker comes in, and like in the bottom there's a cartridge. Oh, by the way, there's a game in the bottom of this box as well.
Off the top of my head, I don't think any Game Boy game ever came with a statue, and I think that would be really cool to be like, hey, this is the first one. Yeah. So that's been on my mind.
Okay.
I think that could come out really cool.
Ensure you let us all know, and I'm more than happy to kick the can for forever it's worth. That sounds pretty awesome. I think I'm going to talk to Tristan. So, sorry, just to clarify, and there's probably other people that might also have the same question. You don't know if you're going to do a physical reissue of Diadius yet, because you've obviously got this. You've got this other work, and that's a priority. You've got 3 months in September, and maybe a statue, and
I'll say this much: it's currently in talks. It's looking like it will happen. But it's one of those things where everyone's got to be happy on both sides for it to happen. Okay.
The best way is just to sort of stay with you, I guess, on Instagram and get some indication. And
it almost certainly is going to happen, but nothing's in concrete yet.
I see how I've dragged you around from I don't know to it's pretty much yes. It's just
I get so many emails about it. I don't know. I get I'm pretty new to Reddit still. I'm trying to get better with it, but I've got like the direct message thing in that, and every single one of my direct messages is, "Hey, when can we buy this again?" It's oh my god, and I don't know how to respond to them other than just like, maybe soon.
It must be so nice though. I mean, you don't ever feel that you're letting anybody down because you were never, like you said, your expectations were never to have such an effect. So just know that, if you put a turn around, I mean, you can count all those DMs and at least 50% of those people will actually pony up and buy it. So it's got to be really good feedback.
I just don't want to let anyone down, so.
Wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, well, there will always be someone that'll complain because your trees don't move. I wouldn't get to worry about it.
Oh man, there's certainly a lot of that. I always joke that the fastest way to find out if anything's wrong with your game is to put it online.
Yeah,
and
tell people that you're really attached to it.
Well, like that sounds a bit more bitter than I actually am, because it was actually a really fast way of like QA checking a game. They're like, "Oh, this is broken. Why is that broken?" I'm like, it's not broken anymore. And, if anyone ran into anything, it really was the fastest way to fix it. So I don't begrudge anyone if they tell me something's wrong with the game.
And that's such a really awesome open way to treat people as well. Like, I was kind of belting around, and I'm assuming the early stages of Dragonborn. This is not your game, but one of the Spacebot games. And I was like, something's here and I can't find it and blah, blah, blah. And I kind of messaged him and I'm like, I don't want any spoilers, but I've done this and I've done that. And dude, I really want to go further with this. And then he was like, oh, what version do you have? Because there was a version that didn't allow you to do a certain thing. And I was like, oh, I got this like 2 days ago. And he's like, oh, that's fine. So to be that open and say, it astounds me when a company like a developer says, hey, well, I want $90 for this new game, this AAA game. By the way, as soon as you install it, there's a 56 meg update file, a day zero patch, and you're like, are you freaking for real? You dudes have just cleaned the town out. You've cleaned the house out, and now you're asking us to patch it.
Well, on that note, it's like I tell you what, when I said earlier I dropped another project I was working on because of this, and this is half of why. But like when you're putting a game on a cartridge, it's like it's game over if there's any mistakes on it. And it was like sleepless nights of, oh my god, this has got to be immaculate. And I worked on there were some issues initially where it was like, but that doesn't break the game. Like you can just say, So there were some things that got through the net initially that could not be there on a cartridge, and it was like, and it was kind of like Christmas lights thing of if you fix one thing, does it break 3 others? So you've got to keep testing this game, and it was like, oh my god. And when you have playtesters, sometimes if they've played the same thing over and over again, and you're like, oh, here's it as exactly the same again.
It's like proofreading. You kind of everybody's going to miss that same error.
I remember
did you have playtesters?
Not officially. Luckily there were
just your best friend there. What was his name? Who was the guy who your best mate that you kept bringing up?
Oh, Christian. Oh yeah, he was
just get Christian to keep playing it. He's like, it's great. No, I want to know if it's broken, not if it's great.
Well, that was another thing. Like, I don't need the praise, I just need to find the problem. I remember I submitted a build to Spacebot, and I was like, it should be done. And because I'd fixed all the issues, and then I played it later, and they were like, hey, by the way, everything's broken now. And I was like,
oh man,
what? And you could walk through walls and nothing was right. And I was like, oh my god, like some little fix had everything had come undone. And I was like, oh my god. And so it was like I say, stress everywhere. And we ended up with a version that is like, as far as I can tell, pretty ironclad.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've played it 8 or 9, 10 times and a couple more, and I'm not looking. I guess the other thing is what you're looking forward to, and I'm also for me personally, I'm dealing with hardware that's 30 years old, and I'm dealing with like my DMG and the GBC are both like IPS, and if you pay any attention to some of the what I would consider decent YouTubers that show you about installs and pros and cons, and they're like, there's this anomaly and there's going to be artifacts, and anything that comes up in any game, whether it be a game that's made in the last 12 months or a game that's made 30 years ago, if I see anything odd, I'm going to think this is an IPS, not knowing what to do with this. So you can probably hide behind that a little tiny bit. I don't know.
I remember there was, sorry.
No, you're right. Keep going.
There was a bug in the game, and it was caused by the engine, not to shift the blame, but it was not something I could have fixed.
Right.
And if you held certain buttons in a certain order, it would like zip you to another scene, but it would zip you to 0.00, which is the top left corner. And then the way Game Boy Studio works is if you walk out of the scene, you'll end up in the next. So they could walk up or left, and then it would warp them to some completely irrelevant place.
Man, there's some Easter egg potential there.
Well, people were doing like sub 2-minute runs because of that glitch, and it wasn't something I could fix. And it was also something that could be accidentally triggered because of the button input.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know what's happening. And I sent the bug to the engine, the people who make the engine, and they were like, if we can't replicate it, we can't fix it, which is common. That's not an excuse. You need to know what's wrong to fix it. And this one guy, he would get it every time. He could do it. He had figured it out, and he could get around the game. Like, he had broken the game. Not by his. I had made a broken game. He knew how to exploit that.
Yeah.
And it's really funny. I don't want to put him on blast, but if you look around YouTube for anything on the game, he's in like every comment section being like, well, you can just do this glitch.
Oh,
and, and I was like, oh my god,
having fun with it. Fair go.
And he mentioned it everywhere. It's on like articles about the game. It's on YouTube videos about the game. It's on the itch.io page. And again, I do not in the slightest begrudge him for it, because I need to know about these issues.
Yeah.
But it was looking like something I couldn't fix because it wasn't on my end. So I was like, the cartridge is just going to ship this glitch. And I think he wrote to me. He was like, yo, wow, I'm going to do the glitch on the cartridge version or something. And I was like, you probably are. I can't fix it.
Yeah.
And
what happened?
We got it in the 11th hour. We sorted it
before it went to cart.
Before the cartridge.
Oh my gosh!
So the glitch isn't in the cartridge anymore.
Oh man!
It was like, I think it was something like there's a frame between scenes.
Yeah,
you could cancel out and end up in the wrong place, and the people making the engine figured that out, and they got rid of it, and now you can't do it. And I was just like,
yeah, I mean,
it was like a little victory.
Yeah. Let's say, for example, that guy that found the glitch, his name was Simon. Well, it was a fictional name. You're like, take that, Simon, you son of a bitch! You're not glitching my game.
But he became like such a character in my actual life that I kind of want to make a homage to him in the next thing.
Like a nemesis out there kind of glitching your game.
Well, I like I say, I don't hold any hate in my heart for this person.
He may have saved you a whole bunch of
I think he did. It's just this funny thing.
That's hilarious. It's like that there was the Cyberpunk that came out, and it's like, sort of referring back to what you're saying about there are humans behind this. And as a non-AAA gaming gamer, someone that just observes and appreciates a lot of the art and I'm of the age where I appreciate there's always a human behind it somewhere. Yeah. And to have that game come out in such a state and see the different reactions of people going, yeah, it's broken, it looks great. Is it worth this kind of money? No. And having other people like pulling poop out of their nappies and throwing it at people, and it's just like, and then you kind of go to shift the camera to the other side, to the people that are responsible for the game delivering and the pressure exerted on them to go, it's going out. You guys just fix this shit. It's going out. It's going to cartridge tomorrow, whatever the format is. It's going out. And those people going, it's broken. It's going out. We'll patch it. Day 1, day 5, day 26. This is unpatchable. It's going out. There must have been some pressure. Because it's a slight disaster from what I can tell.
I wonder if some people realize that like it's not as simple as just like, oh wow, you just put it on that other system. And I think a lot of the problem.
You mean like cross-platform, like PlayStation versus Xbox?
You can't just be like, oh, I'll put it there and there, and like it will just work somehow. And I think a lot of the issues came from the earlier versions, as far as I've heard. I know every version had its problems. Cards on the Table, I haven't played it, but from what I could see across the board, it seems that promised version got a lot of the trouble. And I think it's, you've got one team who are developing all these different versions, and then a QA team, and maybe not the lead time after it.
Yeah.
I think it was just a bit of a train wreck of
the perfect
storm. Everyone, falling on top of each other. You know.
It's going to happen. I mean, these things are going to make history, and a lot of people, you've learned your lessons from, game jams that didn't go to plan. And unfortunately, it's going to be probably the smaller people that put in, 90 hours a week and slept under their desk and lived on microwave hot dogs. They're the ones that are probably going to get hurt the most. Someone at a few levels is still going to get their bonus, and they'll move to another studio, and it's the smaller people will always suffer. So when you shit on them, you shit on the smaller ones, the ones that really give a crap, as opposed to the big people up top.
It's so weird how multifaceted it is, and I'll never forget this. I had a bunch of friends in the first studio I worked with, and they had done work with Gearbox Games. They were the artists on it, like 3D artists and stuff like that, texture artists. And they had worked on Colonial Marines, which is, has gone down in history as an infamously bad game, overpromised and underdelivered kind of game.
Yeah.
And these guys, like when it came up, they almost seemed like, we worked on that kind of thing, But it was heartbreaking because they had made like these amazing 3D models of the aliens, that their work was phenomenal. And I was like, I don't think people see that this is like, it's so much goes into a game. And these people have crushed it, but now their name's tarnished by the overarching thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's similar to when some sports teams don't, like, say if, it's quite often that a team won't take the final at a World Cup, whatever code. And it goes to shit. And you're like, the coach wasn't really in it. He was on his way out. And the whole team, gets just demoralized and treated like dirt. Yeah. No one knows behind the scenes the incohesion or the lack of trust in the leadership or whatever as to why that team on the day wasn't 100% gelled like the other team. And again, people sit back on the couch and go, oh, my team are a bunch of wankers. He's like, well, they're not. They just didn't give you your dream from your couch. So maybe just shut up and go run a mile. Anywho, look, I just think it's important that people remember that there's people doing the things that we all love. And you've got personal experience from like a larger studio down to your own, and having Glitchmaster out there kind of pressuring you to raise the bar, and you're always going to learn. And it's important that we stay sympathetic, whichever the word is, to people at whatever level of quality or size of product it is.
Yeah. Like I say, I think the takeaway for me is always that critique is important.
It's
slinging becomes
a fundamental part of the process is critique. Shit slinging is it's poop. It's a terrible thing to do, but anyway, it happens. But look, Dedius, sorry, I pronounced it incorrectly a couple times. Dedius, and the new game project Rockmelon or whatever it is. That's I'm going to call it. If ever I messed you up, like how goes
Melon?
You say? That's what I'll be like.
My god! I'm writing that down.
That's the secret name of the game. I just love the dude now. Like I had looked, but now I'm like, I'm so right. It's the fifth member of KISS.
I'll send you some. I don't know if I post it.
I'll just post whatever you've got. Just post up for everybody. Show us all. I want everybody to get behind it, because it just looks so cool. Like that post you've got there of like there's like 8 frames of him in all different states of angry kissness.
So to the right of that, the Super Nuclear Bros guy, there's some concept art of this game drawn in that style.
Right.
And I'm like holding off posting any of it just yet, but there is a lot more to see. So
what's Super Nuclear Bros?
That was just an idea I had a while back. Obviously, Super Mario Bros. 2's cover, but back when I was drawing Monsters and Gore, that recently came out as a T-shirt. But that style of illustration is kind of what I call my style, what I usually draw like.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. What's with the pumpkin guy?
That was for a YouTube channel.
Right.
Just Add Monsters. They're big into Godzilla and their kaiju, which I wholeheartedly can relate to.
Yep. That was a Halloween thing.
Yeah, they wanted like a Halloween version of their monster I designed for them. So that's what that is.
What was your feelings on Godzilla vs. Kong? I've seen it.
I actually haven't seen it yet.
Oh, really?
I had it spoiled for me.
You know what's going to...
Yeah. Because I've just come through like moving into this place, I've had a bit of a rough year after losing my last job.
Yeah.
And for a large portion of it, I didn't have a TV of my own.
Right. And you probably couldn't go to the movies because you guys have been locked down.
It kind of got lost in the mix a bit, but I do still want to see it.
It's great. I really like. I'll buy into anything Godzilla. I just think the whole concept of everything is just like, I watched the old ones. The original one is. I watched again recently after listening to a podcast, and I'm like, I listened to a podcast. It's these 2 guys that just go through them, and it really became aware to me what the movie really means about. Like you can explain it, but they're talking about this is nuclear war, and this was only that movie was made like something like 6 years after Japan was released from what's it called? Occupation.
Yeah.
So the US had just left and said, okay, you can have it back now. It's a very, very proud land, and things had been done and said, and everybody knows that. But it's almost a documentary on mankind and There's a lot to be. There's moments in it where there's like a woman sheltering her 2 children in the corner of an alleyway, as I think Godzilla's trash on the joint, and the whole thing happens over like a day and a half. You get the feeling it's like a month of danger, but it's like, no, it's just one night and one day where he just goes bonkers. And she says to her children, "Don't cry. We're going to be with Daddy soon," who was clearly lost in the war 6 to 7 years ago, and you're like, there's something going on here, because there was a lot of clampdown on Japan as the government was sort of saying, let's not cry about it. Let's just move on. Let's take this honorably. And so he was like, I got some things to say. I'm going to make this huge monster movie, and it's going to help me express how we are hurting.
That first one in particular, like there's a lot of talk about like the, like saying too much for those who hadn't seen this 70-year-old film. There's a lot of talk of he's created this weapon, but he doesn't want it to be used in the wrong way, kind of thing.
Exactly,
and that plays into that as well.
Yeah. It's
the first one is probably my favorite of all of them. And
you take it for what it is. Like you can laugh at the suits and stuff, whatever. But as a film, like I've recently started watching films that
I recently got this for my birthday. My partner bought it me, and it's the first 15 films on Blu-ray. So
wow,
yeah, going through it all again.
Good.
But that being said, I know some people are super down on the modern American ones, and I didn't mind them.
Yeah, they're all right. The last one before this one with Brian, what's his name in it, and the Sons of Marine and stuff. Like, I enjoyed that one a fair bit. The one prior to that with the one with King of Monsters. I mean, that was still.
So that one, I was like a kid in the cinema. I went with like a group of people who were all like, "Oh, this is shit," and I was just like, "Oh, they're doing the music," and that's a reference to that film. And like, I love that.
Show me Ghidorah going spastic somewhere else. Like, I mean, this is fine. My only problem with that movie was she's 11.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's the actress that plays 11. I'm like, and there's one point where she's like screaming at them when there's blood in her face. I'm like, oh no, she's gonna like upside down them or something. It's just it was my only problem, because she's just so solid as the character from Stranger Things. But so much to like. You just got to enjoy it.
Have you seen Shin Godzilla?
Oh yeah. How good is it? That's probably it's a great one to watch. There's a lot of those sort of scenes, because like you pretty much, I haven't been able to find a version that's got like an English dub, which is fine. And I did have to stop and have a sandwich halfway, because it's quite a long movie. But there's lots of scenes where there's just like the politicians sort of sitting around in a room with some Navy, and someone sort of going, okay. And it's like a 15-minute scene. It's like, okay, so we tried this. How'd they go? Didn't work. We've tried this. They go, didn't work. What else we got left? Anybody got any ideas? Just dealing with the concept of being invaded by this creature.
There's that one scene in it where it's like a long shot of all the people in the office just working on it.
Yeah.
And you just see someone in the far distance be like, woo, because he's figured out the solution. It's like very much like how people would deal with the situation in that film. I love that film. I saw it twice in the cinema when it came to Florida.
Right.
And I got it on Blu-ray as soon as I could.
I've only watched it at home on my TV. I would love to see it at the cinema. I think it would just be spectacular.
It got like a limited, I think it was like a limited showing thing. And I was like, I need to be there, and I need to see that.
Yeah, you need to sort of find some weird draft house that plays that sort of stuff randomly. I've recently been trying to watch watching some Tarantino, and I've watched some of the classics like Pulp Fiction and Glorious Bastards. But I find him incredibly disturbing. I'm just at the age where just there's these moments. I mean, I've seen Reservoir Dogs, a few of those, but some of them I just can't watch. And I recently watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Death Proof, the Kurt Russell in the car.
I haven't seen either of those.
Just, there's moments where I had to look away. I'm like, oh, I can't watch that. But if I don't watch the films just based on that, then I miss out on some incredible storytelling and some acting that just cannot be explained. And I'm not like, I love actors and Hollywood's great, but I love a bloody good story. And when a person who I've seen as an astronaut and as a freaking rock climber convinces me that he's now a stuntman, and he's got a dark past, I'm like, dude, you can have my money. That's you're working.
I'm so excited to see him. Like I said, I've just moved into this place. I don't even have a sofa.
Oh, really?
But I'm waiting for this like area to be set up so I can get back to watching movies and stuff. And those two are high on the list for me, for sure.
Good stuff. All right. Well, look, mate, I really appreciate your time. I've taken up like a good hour and a half of your morning, and there's much appreciated. I always give my guests an opportunity, and I take the opportunity to sort of promote someone or something. For me this week is now it's Instagram, and it's me and the boys 91. It's spelled with a 3 instead of an E. And I'll have this in the show notes. But it says Mike. Mike's from Austin, Texas, and there's just a bunch of really nice, good, clean builds. And Mike clearly loves the Game Boy, and he puts up some great photography and some great builds. And he just, if you're not following Mike and you're looking for some inspiration and just a nice way to kind of, make your feed that little bit more enjoyable each day, then yeah, go. I'll put this in, like I said, put it in the show notes. Me and the boys 91. And he says, just a hobby. I dig white lenses. That's great. No worries. So yeah, I mean, you've mentioned, Game Boy Studio and Spacebot, so you can just sort of reinforce those, or if you've got other people that you want to throw in there, then this is your opportunity.
I've got two I picked up. I was going to say Spacebot because I can't say enough kind words, but
he'll be in there anyway. I mean, I'll put him in there anyway.
Yeah,
that's a freebie.
As a friend, he's amazing. As a creative, he's amazing. And on top of that as well, as a collector, I am blown away constantly by his amazing collection. He's got, like I say, the full set of Saturn, which is like a dream for me.
Right.
And he's got some of the really rarer Game Boy games now. And I just don't have a bad thing to say about him. So Spacebot Interactive is definitely my first. And then second, I'll go for an amazing guy called Matt Breckens, who does Rogue Print Co.
How do you spell that one?
Rogue, like
yep.
Rogue Print, Print.
Yep.
And Co. Like company.
Seen. Yeah. Seen.
And he does a lot of awesome shirts and works with a lot of artists. He does also a lot of funny stuff, like his recent thing. I'll leave you to see that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Fair enough.
But
my goodness. Okay, fair enough.
I actually just released my first shirt with him. He works with like a load of awesome comic book artists, like Becky Cloonan. He's done a lot of work with. Matt Bailey is another big one. He's done work with.
Yeah.
God's Teeth. So he is like a good sort of collective for artists, and
right, like a little hub where you guys can sort of go and get your stuff sorted.
Yeah, so I appreciate him helping out with that shirt stuff recently.
He has
his latest thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm going to leave it for other people to look at and just go.
Okay. I think it's one of those things where the joke has just really taken off for him.
Right, but some people are into it, and that's fine.
Yeah,
that's cool. Is that the Super Nuclear Bros 2 sticker? Is it?
Yeah.
Right. So how was that through him? How is that related to him?
So I actually did the shirt initially a long time ago. It was done for like one of these like.
Oh, right. There's the shirt in black and white. Yeah.
Yeah. It was done for like one of those. There's t-shirt companies where you submit a design and they'll pick it and print it for people.
Right.
And the t-shirt company I sent it to, it was devastating at the time. Like they took it, people paid for it, and they just never printed the shirt. But they took people's money.
Sons of bitches.
And then they were like, "Where's my shirt?" Messaging me, and I was like, nothing to do with me." And I can't remember how that got resolved. It was so long ago. But I love the design. The shirt never came out, and I recently redrew it. And Matt was kind enough to say, "I'll take it on and release it." So we did a run through him.
Oh, good. Oh my gosh. Oh, some hilarious stuff there. All righty, dude. Well, look, thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. Your game is great fun. Anybody that doesn't already have a copy on it, obviously it's easier if you have a flash card of some sort, but it could be run through an emulator. So you can still, anybody can play it. But if you have a flash card and you can, or if you're fortunate enough to have bought the physical, then Lucky you. I hear there might be more coming. Just keep your eyes on Adam's Instagram. Stick it in a Game Boy and play it. Stick it in a color and play it as well, because you get, twice the fun. But thanks for just sharing so much about, what you're doing and how it all works. And when we add a human element to stuff, we really kind of feel a lot more attached, and we understand that someone's giving a shit. When you tell someone their trees don't move in their game, it hurts their feelings, and that's just a jerky thing to do.
I don't sleep for days.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm more than happy to have talked to you. This has been great. Yeah. I love sharing what I can, and if I can help in any way, I'm always happy to. So.
No worries. And hopefully soon we'll be seeing something new from you around September-ish. Hopefully. It's either September or never, is sort of the sounds of it, or much.
Those are two choices.
Yeah, much later. Much later. All right, buddy.
It should happen. So
okay, good. All right. Thank you so much. You have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll be in touch one way or another.
Awesome. Cheers. You too. Catch you soon.
Okay, mate. Bye.